Do you feel like talking about Tomodachi Life?
I spent most of the Nintendo Switch's lifespan hoping for a follow-up to one of my favorite 3DS games, Tomodachi Life. This weird and hilarious experience seemed like a perfect fit for the hybrid console, and most importantly, I felt like there was so much potential for new ideas and content. And just when I had given up hope that Nintendo would ever revisit this series after years of nothing, it finally happened. Somehow that dream actually ended up coming true, and the long-awaited new entry was fittingly titled Tomodachi Life Living the Dream. And after playing and enjoying it over the past few months at my own pace, now it's time to review the game as a whole and take a look at all of its strengths and weaknesses. It often outdoes its predecessor in exciting ways, although there's also a few places where it falls a bit short. But thankfully it still has that special Tomodachi Life magic that makes it an absolute delight to play. Getting invested in the daily drama of my Mii's lives and creating the island where it all happens has been so much fun, and I'm sure I'll keep playing this game for a very long time. Easily the biggest difference between Living the Dream and the 3DS game is that Miis can now freely walk around the island and hang out together. And when combined with the fancy new camera system that lets you watch them from above, the core gameplay loop feels so much more dynamic and lively. Where the Miis were previously locked to only being in their apartments or scripted moments at specific locations, now the entire island acts as one giant sandbox for them to exist in. And even inside apartment buildings, you have so much freedom to move the camera around to see every angle of their lives. This was probably my biggest hope for a new Tomodachi Life game, and I'm so glad they were able to expand the scope of the gameplay like this. You're still able to quickly locate and check up on your Miis through a useful menu, but I've found the most enjoyment out of simply scanning over the island to see what everyone is up to. I especially love when random moments happen out of nowhere when you're watching your Miis. One of the things I was hesitant about going into this game was the way you can pick up a Mii and place them next to another to kickstart their relationship. I was worried that this would give the player too much power over the day-to-day drama of the island, but I actually think it was executed pretty well overall. It is strange that Miis won't have any friends unless you get involved, but in reality that isn't any different than the 3DS game where you had to answer yes or no when they suggested trying to be friends with someone. Miis will have moments where they're watching someone they haven't met yet closely, and you can encourage them to go introduce themselves without needing to pick them up. Plus, the more traditional way of them suggesting a friendship is still here as well. So the big difference is that you now have more control over that initial meetup if you want to, rather than having to wait for them to randomly suggest it themselves. But you still don't have any influence over whether or not they'll actually get along, and I frequently ran into situations where two Miis that I desperately wanted to get together ended up just not vibing. No matter how many times I dragged Pearl over to Marina so they would make up and start dating already, they didn't want to speak to each other at all after a particularly bad argument. Which I think is a good thing, by the way, as it makes everything a lot more interesting. So while this new system does give you more control over the Miis overall, I don't mind it and actually enjoy being able to put certain Miis together and watch what happens from there. I love getting to act as an instigator of drama, purposefully placing two Miis who are fighting next to each other and then watching the fireworks. The romance plotlines are really great as well, adding an extra element of randomness that you don't really have any control over, except for trying to tell them that this isn't a good idea. My Mii first developed a crush on Samus, and I told him to move on since the same thing happened on my 3DS save file and I wanted to shake things up this time around. Then he immediately had another crush on Samus right afterwards, which I harshly denied because bro, you gotta get a grip here, come on. They then became great friends and moved in together, and Samus ended up getting a crush on him. So at this point it was clear that there was something going on between these two despite my meddling, so I decided to just let it play out and stop getting involved. Meanwhile, Matt couldn't hold back his feelings for Samus any longer, and after both him and Sans declared their love to her, Samus chose neither of them. Then my Mii crushed on Samus for a third time, and she was ready to risk it all and finally asked him out on a date. And the rest is history. Marriage, having a child, the whole thing. I bring up this chaotic romance plotline because it's the perfect example of the kind of shenanigans that made me love the 3DS game so much, and it shows how Tomodachi Life can naturally create dramatic sequences that I always get unreasonably invested in. This story is unique to my island and my Miis, and everyone who has played this game likely has countless stories just like it with their own unique twists and turns. To me, the most important aspect of this series is its ability to surprise you with bizarre moments and hilarious drama involving the Miis you've created, and I'm so glad to say that this game makes me laugh just as much as the original did. One of the areas where Living the Dream both excels and possibly missteps is the new level of customization and how it's implemented. The most straightforward improvements are the new additions to the base Mii Maker, which has an array of new hairstyles, facial features, and color options. There are so many more possibilities when making Miis now, which is really the center of the whole experience. One of my favorite parts of this game is how creative you can get without even needing to use the new makeup feature at all. Speaking of which, the makeup system is less advanced than the one from Miitopia, meaning it's harder to make more complicated and accurate versions of characters. The problem is that drawing on facial features means they're entirely static, making those more complicated Miis entirely emotionless in-game. I've found that it works best when adding simple extra touches to Miis, and doesn't look quite as good when trying to draw an entire face. I'm not the type of person to go all out with the makeup system in either game, but it does seem like you can still pull off some impressive stuff if you're really willing to put the time in. However, there is no online sharing like Miitopia had, meaning you're on your own when designing Miis, aside from online tutorials. While I can totally understand why people are upset about this, for me I think it's actually ended up being sort of a good thing. Since I had to create all of the Miis myself, I gained a more personal attachment to them, compared to the countless amazingly designed Miis I downloaded in Miitopia with no effort required on my part at all. Creating Miis of my favorite fictional characters turned into some of the most fun I had with the game, which is something I might have missed out on if I could have just instantly downloaded someone else's version of Perry the Platypus. And yeah, he looks a little weird, but he's my weird little version of him. However, I do think there could have been a better middle ground here. Maybe keeping the QR code system that the 3DS game had or something similar without adding a whole online component to the game. But if having no online features is what it takes for the game to have no filter whatsoever, I honestly think that's a pretty fair trade-off, as getting to have your Miis say whatever you want makes the game so much more enjoyable. Then there's the Island Builder mode, which lets you totally customize the island itself with different ground styles and decorations. I think this is a fantastic new addition that I engaged with a lot since it's super easy and intuitive to use. It is pretty limited since it's based on a grid and only has 2 levels, but I enjoyed figuring out how to be creative within those limitations. I think it's great how different everyone's islands look compared to the small and unchanging 3DS island. I've spent a ton of time moving things around and building new areas for my Miis to hang out in. This also motivates me to start a whole new save file in the future if I ever hit the 70 Mii limit, as creating an entirely new island from scratch means it will end up looking drastically different. Unlocking new items through the wish fountain as you level up your Mii's happiness is a great progression system that slowly expands the scope and scale of what's possible with your island, and I found myself consistently eager to unlock new stuff to use. And the best part is that your Miis will actually interact with the quick build items that you place, so they're not just decorations. Put down a beach chair and you might see a Mii taking an afternoon nap on it sometime. Design a hangout spot with a table in the middle, and multiple Miis will actually sit on it and have a conversation there. This level of interactivity is pretty impressive, and it makes using the island builder so much more satisfying. I honestly have very few complaints about this feature, aside from wishing there was just one more level of height available to give the island just a bit more variety and verticality. The other big focus of customization comes in the form of the palette house, where you can design your own custom food, items, clothes, and even exteriors and interiors for apartments. This has an even higher skill ceiling than the makeup system, and to be honest, I didn't end up using this feature very much at all. I felt intimidated by all the potential possibilities, so I only used it for very simple designs here and there. Because I'm not really much of an artist, I also wanted to see if you could still fully enjoy the game without needing to draw and create items. And I'm here to report that for the most part, it's totally possible to have fun with this game without needing to draw a ton of impressive stuff. It's mostly just an extra feature that can add even more spice to your island, but there are a few ways where I feel that it's focused on a bit too much. After unlocking the palette house, you're told to make a simple custom food item for your Miis, and I just slapped the cherry on top of the cake template and called it a day because I wasn't really in the mood to spend a ton of time designing something. Little did I know that this cherry cake item would start popping up in a lot of interactions between my Miis, with the weirdest case being when it was almost like the focus of the child cutscenes later on. Now it does make sense that these custom items would show up a lot, as if I were to have put a ton of time into a design, I would want to see it around often. For a player who created a custom food that they were really proud of, it probably felt rewarding to see it used in game so much. But since mine was a quick throwaway design that I didn't put any time into, it felt a bit odd to see it pop up so often. Is this my fault for putting in such little effort into my cherry cake? Yeah, probably. But this was the one part of the game that felt like I was getting a less engaging experience because I wasn't spending time in the palette house. But honestly, I don't think this is too big of a problem, more of just a minor annoyance for me. The rest of the features available in the palette house are pretty much entirely optional, as I rarely designed anything else and still feel like I got the full living the dream experience. And when I did use it to create a prison section of my island for my Miis who deserve to be behind bars, it definitely elevated that experience even more. I've seen a lot of people compare these new island customization elements to Animal Crossing New Horizons, and while I understand why that comparison keeps getting made, I don't think it's really the same situation. These two franchises have extremely different gameplay styles, and all the added customization elements fit in a lot better in Tomodachi Life. And the core me-focused gameplay loop feels very much intact here, with interactions and cutscenes being just as wacky and unhinged as they always have been. Where with New Horizons, the immersive life sim elements of that game took more of a backseat due to the focus on customization. The annoyingly slow and tedious island builder mode in that game felt out of place when compared to previous games in the series, but it feels right at home in a Tomodachi Life game. And thankfully Living the Dream also doesn't have that same watered down and overly friendly vibe that the modern Animal Crossing villagers have, as there were plenty of fights and disagreements between my Miis. Although it could always use a bit more serious beef and drama, as things do get resolved pretty quickly most of the time. It's possible I could change my mind in the future, but for the time being, all of these new customization features feel like a natural extension of the series and not a sudden shift into a different direction. And the more complicated stuff in the palette house is mostly just a side thing and isn't a requirement to have fun with the game, as you can play it just like the original and stick to buying and giving your Miis pre-made food, clothing, and interiors, which there are a ton of. Where the New Horizons similarities unfortunately continue is that there are quite a few features from the 3DS game that did not return, which is a shame. However, not all of these missing features are created equal. The biggest ones are the concert hall, the more in-depth process of raising a child, married Miis sleeping in the same bed at night, and the rankings board. These are things that I genuinely miss having in the game, and I wish they could have been included. The concert hall's omission especially hurts, since that was one of my biggest time sinks in the original. I will greatly miss writing way too many stupid songs. Raising a child also feels a lot less impactful now since you're not involved at all and it happens so fast, and the fact that married Miis stay in their own separate rooms is disappointing. I feel like they could have created a system where their rooms are combined into one that's split in half with each of their interior themes, or just still have them move into a house together so it feels like more of a meaningful change to their relationship after the wedding. I also miss being able to quickly see which Miis are the most popular with the rankings board, as just having this one simple list of favorites at the very end isn't quite as interesting. I understand and agree with everyone saying that these missing features should have been included. However, when it comes to stuff like quirky questions, Judgment Bay, rap battles, or Tomodachi quests, I don't think they're quite as big of a deal. These were iconic parts of the 3DS game and were quick, fun distractions, but they were also incredibly repetitive and didn't add that much to the game in the grand scheme of things. And compared to the amount of new stuff that was added in Living the Dream, I don't mind that these smaller scale things were left behind. It is a new entry after all, so it makes sense that not every single thing is going to be exactly the same. As sad as it is to see certain stuff left out, I also think it's important to highlight all the new stuff that's genuinely a massive improvement over the original. Structural changes like allowing same-sex relationships, selectable genders and pronouns, having a system for Miis who are related to each other, and letting Miis freely walk around are a huge deal. And I think they're much more substantial and necessary additions than including something like Judgment Bay. I think that's the key element of why I don't think the New Horizons comparison is entirely accurate, as Living the Dream improves on its predecessor in countless other ways that make it a stronger and more enjoyable game as a whole. But with New Horizons, I can confidently say that I think it's a step down from New Leaf.
Time to eat my hot dog. I must be imagining things.
The other big criticism I often see about this game is how repetitive it feels and that it gets old fast. I can totally see where this complaint is coming from, as there is a limited amount of dialogue interactions, dreams, problems, and level up items that start to repeat pretty quickly. But Tomodachi Life having repetitive gameplay isn't exactly new. The 3DS game was super restrictive and repetitive, with Miis asking for and talking about the same things over and over again. But it was fun and addicting despite the repetition, as it's the Miis themselves and the plotlines that develop in your head regarding them that give the game a sense of longevity. I've always felt that Tomodachi Life is a game where you get out of it what you put into it, which can be either a huge positive or negative depending on the person. Not vibing with this game because you're not willing to invest the time and energy needed to build out a cast of Mii characters that you care about is totally valid, but I think that sort of just comes with the series. I personally feel that this game has a far higher ceiling in terms of replayability when compared to the original, and is actually a lot less repetitive overall. Additions like the new little quirks let you make each Mii feel way more unique and full of personality, hugely affecting the vibe of everyone on your island. And again, getting to watch the Miis walk around the island and interact out in the open is a game changer. The beautiful new cel-shaded art style should be the new standard for Mii games going forward, assuming we're actually going to get new Mii games, that is. And the soundtrack has that same incredible Tomodachi Life energy that somehow makes it so I never get sick of listening to the same songs over and over again. Some of these tracks feel straight out of the 3DS and Wii U era, which is awesome. I'm also glad they were able to include Mii News after nearly cutting it, as it's so much fun to briefly check in each day to see what dumb stories they're covering. Okay, now I'm praising this game a bit too much, so let's switch back to complaining about a bunch of random stuff. While the selection of little quirks available once a Mii levels up is pretty solid, I do wish there were a few more items available to give them, as that would really help shake things up in the long run. And while I do expect some level of repetitive gameplay in Tomodachi Life, there are certain events like Mii's falling over or asking to place decorations around the island that happen too frequently. No, Inkling Boy, I'm never going to add a vending machine to the beach, so stop asking. And you all have got to stop requesting photos because I'm not doing that either. I wish there was a way to turn off certain Mii suggestions like this because I almost never accept some of them. But with the purple problem events, thankfully you can skip past the dialogue pretty quickly. And once I started looking at them as an opportunity to naturally introduce two Miis to each other, they annoyed me a lot less. It might just be me, but I feel like Miis ask to play minigames with you a lot more often than they used to, leading to me declining their requests pretty frequently. It's also pretty lame how when a Mii is proposing, they can only do it inside their room instead of having the selection of options that are available when they're confessing their love initially. This is a really weird decision, as a proposal is a pretty huge moment that feels a lot less special when it's restricted to a room like this. Maybe it's something technical related to the minigame that's attached to proposing, which by the way is a huge improvement over the previous proposal sequence, but it would have been better for these important scenes to happen in more exciting places. I also wish there could have been some different weather in the game to add a bit more variety. The different times of day are all gorgeous, but having a rainy or cloudy day every now and then would add some much needed visual diversity to the gameplay. The seasonal items are great, and I love that they're still available in the shop and the Wish Fountain even once the season is over. But having to manually change the ground to snow during winter is pretty lame. On 3DS, the island would just naturally change for each season, and I think having the basic grass texture change based on the season would have been a better solution. I could keep rambling about a ton of both positive and negative aspects of this game, but I think that covers most of my main thoughts. While it definitely isn't flawless, I've really loved my time with this game and I'm excited to keep playing it in the future. I can't exactly say that this was a totally unbiased review of the game, because at the end of the day I just love Tomodachi Life, so of course I'm going to enjoy it. But I do genuinely think that Living the Dream is a big improvement over the 3DS game, and it got most of the really important stuff right. Problems like the concert hall being missing in action and children speedrunning their childhood are unfortunate. And while I would welcome an update that addressed these issues, that wouldn't undo the fact that the game launched without those features. It's taken me a while to figure out how I feel about this game, as I think I spent too much time on social media around launch and felt a bit overwhelmed by all the strong opinions about it that immediately flooded my feeds. But I mean, it's not like I'm one to talk, as I just got done sharing my opinion on the internet. I'm just glad to have finally settled on a relatively stable view of the game that feels like my own. Which is that while it does have its issues and is missing a few important things, it manages to keep the soul of the series intact and still has that ability to make me laugh more than any other game can. It might not be everything I've ever wanted, but it nails a lot of the most important stuff to create an experience that feels faithful to the series while also fresh and exciting at the same time. And when compared to other notable franchise revivals on the Switch like Mario Strikers or Switch Sports, I can say without a doubt that Tomodachi Life's long-awaited return is a much stronger comeback that I've had an absolute blast with. And that's my review of Living the Dream. I've been playing this game for a few hours every week pretty consistently since launch, which has been a great pace for me and has kept me from feeling burned out. And I'm not planning on stopping anytime soon, as I'm actually excited to keep playing this game without having to think about what I'll say in my review at all. I will not rest until Pearl and Marina are happily married. You can only resist fate for so long, you two.